Happy Friday, friends. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandages here with your Atlantic Tropical Update. Today, we've got a named storm out there, finally. Tropical Storm Bonnie has grown out of PTC2 that for days had remained stagnant. We finally got that closed center of circulation. Also, a brand new investigative area. Yesterday, we talked about 95L. That was in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. That is long gone and fallen apart and over land now. But we've got a U.S. East Coast interest, 96L. Today, July 1st, 2022, so we're heading into the second month of the 6-month-long hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin, and still the percentage of named storms during July is quite low. We're still on the low end of development for June and then July. It really ramps up as we get into August, and certainly near the peak of the month, or peak of the season, I should say, in September, when over a third of the named storms occur during that month. So here's the latest. PTC2 defines its center, so it gets an upgrade to Tropical Storm Bonnie, the second named storm of the season here in 2022 in the Atlantic Basin. Bonnie to become a hurricane, but well after making landfall. How does that make sense? I'm going to explain that in just a second. Now, there are two other tropical waves out there, the one off the U.S. East Coast, and also another one that's tagged, or it's not tagged at all, but it's in the Leeward Islands, and is another tropical wave. Both have low chances, though, at the moment. All right, here's how things look with Bonnie currently. It's just hours away from making landfall in Nicaragua. Still moving at a pretty good clip, going off the 7 o'clock advisory, still moving due west. 17 miles an hour. Winds a little stronger than when we talked yesterday, up to 45 miles per hour to be a tropical storm. You need 39 miles per hour or greater. We have that. We also have that defined center of circulation hurricane hunters found earlier today, giving it that upgrade to a tropical storm. Pressure's fallen a bit too, under 1,000 millibars now, and again, it is heading due west. Now, it does look much better on satellite presentation today than it did yesterday. It's consolidating a little bit, and I would say that if this had longer time over the water, if it wasn't about to make landfall, we'd see this continue to intensify, perhaps rapidly, with the overall conditions being quite good for development in this part of the Caribbean Sea. It's also a large system. Look at how long it stretches out. Its diameter over 650 miles. Quite a large system for this portion of the Caribbean Basin. All right, so it's about to make landfall in Nicaragua, the northern coast of Costa Rica. So there are tropical storm warnings up for those areas. And even on the Pacific side, too, as it moves over land. Small, narrow landmass there, probably not enough to disrupt it overall and really shake it out. It reemerges out into the Pacific and will grow and potentially strengthen. So we've got our second name on the list. Here's a look at all the other ones. We've used Alex so far. That also was a PTC before it formed in Alex when it moved off the coast or the east coast of Florida and into the open Atlantic. And now, of course, we've got Bonnie and Colin, Danielle, Earl are next on the list. Here's a look at the basin overall. Here's Bonnie. Here's Invest 96L sitting off the coast of South Carolina and Georgia. And another tropical wave that arguably looks better than PTC2 and Bonnie ever did at this point in time. That's only got a 10% chance because the overall environment there now has higher wind shear that's really going to disrupt it from developing much further. All right, here's a look at the recon aircraft that's currently in the system. Aircraft in the hurricane hunters for the Air Force coming out of the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, flying around the system now just before it makes landfall, getting some final readings on that before it gets disrupted by land. Visible satellite imagery here. You can certainly see that rotation of the atmosphere. We've got banding aloft and to the south of the system as well. And just before the sun goes down, you can see the bubbling up, the shadows cast by that setting sun of some higher convection right near that center. Switching it up to water vapor imagery now. No threat of any dry air getting pulled into the circulation there. Plenty of moist air through all levels with this system as it's building off towards the west at a pretty good clip. All right, here's the latest track on this going forward. It moves over land, staying pretty much stagnant of where it's at now, 45-mile-an-hour winds. Moves over the landmass, holds its circulation together is what it's forecast to do, reemerges into a very favorable environment in the eastern Pacific, starts to strengthen quite fast, becomes a hurricane by Monday morning or Monday afternoon, Category 1, 75-mile-per-hour winds, and then getting a little bit stronger even thereafter, up to 80-mile-an-hour winds, heading out into the open sea, not affecting anybody at that point, just bringing some higher surf to Pacific coast of Mexico. All right, so it's crossing basins now, right? Will it keep the same name? Yes, if it keeps its center of circulation intact, it'll keep the name Bonnie heading into the eastern Pacific Basin. It will get a new name. In this case, if the surface circulation dissipates crossing over land. It's not expected to do that. But if it does hold together, keeps the name Bonnie, it's a rare thing. It's only happened 6 times since 1990 when we get those crossover events either from the Pacific to the Atlantic or Atlantic to the Pacific. Most recently was Otto back in 2016. All right, so this is going to be a rainmaker for Nicaragua and Costa Rica. Forecast models put up and over 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of rain in a rather short amount of time and over the next 24 hours. So that's going to mean some flooding and some mudslide potential there. Of course, the wind will be a very narrow wind field with this because it's not a very strong system. All that wind centered around the center of that storm, and it's going to be narrow coming on in there to parts of Nicaragua. About an 80%, 90% chance of encountering tropical storm force winds 39 miles per hour or greater. All right, now let's jump north off the east coast of the United States. Invest 96L kind of came out of nowhere. It's a developing area of low pressure that, as you look at radar here, that's up over South Carolina, Charleston. We're pulling from Jacksonville. Forgot to switch those up there, but this is off of South Carolina's live radar there, local time there being right around 7 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock. And you can see that broad general spin in the atmosphere on radar. You can see it much, much better when we switch things up and look at the visible satellite imagery just before we lose the sunlight. You can see that spin here just to the south of Charleston off the coast of Savannah, Georgia. I'm going to zoom in now with even the more higher resolution satellite imagery out of GO-16. And you can see this bubbling on up out of Beaufort, South Carolina. See that spin there? That is that center of low pressure that is sitting just off the coast in very warm waters. As a result, Hurricane Center sees this. It was at 10% earlier, now it's at 20%. So still low chances of this developing, and it is heading in a direction away from land too. So if it does develop, which it very well may, because as it's moving in that direction, it's heading towards the Gulf Stream. And I'm going to show you that in the sea surface temperatures in just a second. Infrared imagery here shows us the convection centers. Not well organized, obviously, just convection kind of strewn out across a large area there. So that's not defined in that nature, but it is moving into an area that's relatively a little more favorable. So it's heading in this general direction here. It's going to be a slow mover too. But this darker maroon color here is the Gulf Stream. So it's a channel or river, if you will, of warm water streaming up from the Gulf Stream. And that brings waters up and over mid to upper 80s in terms of sea surface temperatures. A little bit cooler, still more than what's necessary for tropical development where it's at now, but it will eventually be building towards that Gulf Stream in the days to come. All right, now let's jump to our other tropical wave. This is not tagged as an invest, but it is a tropical wave. You can see it on satellite imagery here. It does look a little bit healthier than what PTC2 did when it was in the same general vicinity just a few days ago. It's only sitting at 10% chance. Overall, still a favorable moisture environment. Dry air is just off to the north, and wind shear will be a factor for this system. You can see the areas of higher wind shear in the green here. It's located right around here, and even the forecast wind shear expected to stay quite high through the next couple days through the middle of the week. So that's the latest in the Atlantic. We've got Bonnie making landfall, making history going into the Pacific Basin, keeping its same name likely, and those other two waves that we'll keep a close eye on. Aside from that, tropics quieting down at least for the next week or so until we get a favorable phase of some rising motion to re-enter the picture. Until next time, find me on all the social media platforms. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I'm now on TikTok as well. Enjoy your long holiday weekend.